Welcome to episode 15 of the Deficient Vegans Podcast. I'm the Muscle Deficient Vegan here with the Protein Deficient Vegan. You want to say hi?
Hi.
Hi, everybody. So first things first, let's talk a little bit about what protein does. So protein provides the building blocks for all the cells in our body. It gives you what you need to build bones, muscles, organs, and your hair.
How often are you building organs?
I guess that's a good point.
I mean, you're not a woman, so I guess you would never build organs, huh?
That's true, yeah. But, you know, it helps maintain your organs, I guess. I'm not really sure. But it does play a part in the organ. So also, we're just going to talk through some of the benefits of protein. So the big benefit for us for fitness is that it provides the amino acids you need for muscle growth and muscle recovery, especially when you combine this with strength training or resistance training, because you're not really going to build a lot of muscle if you're not lifting weights or doing some kind of resistance training in the gym. And it doesn't necessarily need to be lifting weights. I mean, any kind of training that is qualified as resistance training, that could be sport training or riding a bike or something like that. You know,
or Pilates.
Or Pilates. Yeah, your muscles are going to adapt to any kind of training like that, and having more protein just helps the muscles grow and recover for those activities. Protein also helps you feel more full for longer. Out of all the macronutrients, it's the one that is the most satiating. So if you load up on protein in your diet, you won't feel as hungry as often.
Yeah. Or if you're like me and you ever drink a protein shake, you'll feel like shit forever because you feel so bloated. Does that happen to you?
That doesn't really happen to me, especially with the vegan protein shakes. I used to feel a little, I guess, gassy, bloated on whey protein shakes, some brands. I haven't really found any vegan protein shakes that make me feel that way.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Drinking like 2 servings of protein powder makes me just not want to eat for like a day.
Yeah, some people just don't like protein powder. You're one of those people.
Yeah.
Also, it helps prevent muscle loss while you're losing weight. For some people who have weight to lose, when you lose weight, you're going to lose some fat and some muscle. If we keep the protein up and we keep doing some kind of resistance training during that weight loss process, we can lose a lot more fat in comparison to the muscle we'll lose.
Eat protein, lift weights.
Right.
Okay.
It also helps to maintain your bone mass as you age. It gives you a lower risk over time of osteoporosis and bone fractures, which can be a big issue for people as they get older, depending on their diet.
Yeah, I think this is especially something that happens with women.
Yeah, I read about that. After menopause, I think it's especially important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is this protein paired with resistance training, or does protein alone help with that?
From what I read, protein alone helps with that, but strength training, resistance training also helps with bone strength. So I think combining them is probably the best course of action. Protein also helps to reduce cravings. I saw an article on Healthline that said one study showed that increasing your protein up to 25% of your total calories reduced cravings by 60% and the desire to snack at night by half.
Is that just because you're not hungry, you think?
Yeah, I don't know if they showed, because there was something in there about one of the hormones that triggers your brain to say that it's hungry.
Is that the
suppressed.
gremlin? Gremlin?
Yeah, the gremlin. The hunger gremlin is what we call it. Yeah. And they actually had a follow-up study, I think, with a group of adolescent girls that pretty much showed the same results. So it seems like it's been confirmed at least once. Protein also has a higher thermic effect of food than carbs or fat. So the calories you burn processing the protein will be a little higher than processing carbs or fat. So if you have a little more protein in your diet, you might burn 100 more calories a day just processing that food. Also helps to maintain muscle as you age. This is kind of like the bone health. This is a big issue for people as they get older. They tend to lose a lot of muscle mass pretty quickly, especially later in old age. So sarcopenia is the common term for that, and that's a really big issue. So
what was that again?
Sarcopenia.
Okay. I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that probably leads to like falling and a lot of the injuries
Right.
old people end up having.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the main way that old people become disabled or even die is falling, breaking a bone, something like that. So keep your protein up, keep exercising, lifting weights or some kind of resistance training.
Keep that grip strength.
Yeah, for as long as you can. So grip strength was one of the things that is most closely linked to longevity, basically. So in studies, the stronger your grip is, the longer you live as a correlation. It's not necessarily like get super strength in your grip and you'll live forever, but it tends to correlate with longevity. Also, the last big benefit, there are a lot of little benefits. The last big benefit is it helps with your immune system. Protein is actually used to help create antibodies. So if you have a higher protein diet, your immune system is a little more resilient.
Oh, that's interesting. So if you're sick, you should eat.
Yeah, it can also help with recovery from injuries. So not only sick, but recovery from injuries, because again, it's kind of the building block for all the cells. So all the different things that need to be repaired from an injury, protein intake helps with as well.
That's unfortunate because when I'm sick, I just want to eat like toast.
Yeah, a lot of people I think are
I want to
better than not eating. So
absolutely bland food and not protein.
So if you can stomach it, protein's better.
Isn't protein also supposed to be the macro that leads to the least amount of fat created if you go over on calories? Isn't there something about that?
Yeah, I think it's hard, especially compared to carbs or fat. It's harder for protein to find a way to get stored as body fat.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
But we should probably address this. Now, there is another camp that says too much protein is bad. And we are unbiased, so we will be talking about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I see a lot of this, especially in the vegan community, that's more protein equals more bad. Basically, they say that actually has bad longevity things.
Yeah.
That's the technical way to say this.
Yeah, I've seen some of that. And so ingesting protein increases some markers, I think like IGF-1 and some others, that the argument is they can cause growths like cancer to grow faster and things like that. I think one argument, we'll assume that's true, right? Because some really smart people have said that. And I think there probably is some correlation there. But even if it does cause some of those diseases and some of those things to go a little faster, I think the trade-off is still that you go into older age with more muscle mass and more ability to move around.
Yeah.
So, I mean, everything is kind of a trade-off. So for me, I'll take a slightly increased risk of some of these diseases over not really having enough muscle mass to take care of myself in old age.
Yeah, that's fair. And I guess it's also like quality of life as well.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, you could be like Mr. Glass from what is that movie, Unbreakable, where you're like your bones break by flicking them.
Yeah.
You know, but you could live to be really old.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you know, if you can get by, and there's probably some perfect balance out there. If you eat just enough protein to stay just mobile enough, and if you have a perfect plan for that, have at it. But it's hard to plan for all those eventualities. So for me, I think just focusing on, you know, quality of life and movement is what I'm going to prioritize.
Yeah. And there is a range for protein. So like if your goals aren't, you know, get really massive in the gym, you don't have to go to the upper edge of that range. You know, you could go more for like the minimum required amount or like slightly above that or something, depending on what your goals are.
Right.
But it is really important that you get enough protein.
Yeah, definitely. And we'll talk about some numbers here shortly. So as far as vegan protein sources, just in general, we've got soy sources like tofu, TBP, tempeh, soy milk, pretty much anything based on soy.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably going to be like the go-to source. Unless you have like a soy allergy.
Yeah. Me personally, I don't like tempeh. So do the other ones.
Yeah, tempeh, I mean, there's probably some way out there that I would like it. You know, like everything else, I didn't think I liked it before. But I haven't found a version of tempeh that I really like that much. So it's not really in the rotation for me.
We need to play with it a little bit, but yeah.
Yeah. The next one is wheat gluten-based sources like seitan, and even oats are based on wheat, so they have protein a little bit. But seitan is like a really high protein version of wheat gluten. Next, you'll see, you know, these are the common ones that you see when you ask about vegan protein. It's like beans, lentils, seeds, and nuts. But they're not really a lean protein source. They're either kind of heavy in carbs or heavy in fat, depending on if we're talking about beans or nuts, respectively. So while they do have protein, it's not really something you're going to really focus on your protein goals, especially if you have a higher protein target. And then protein powders, an obvious one. If some of this other stuff is hard to hit, you can just use protein powders. And those are usually a pretty good source of protein.
Yeah, or protein bars or protein cookies or like protein wraps, you know, tortillas. Those are pretty nice. Most of those are made with like pea protein, I think.
Yeah.
Better bagels have a lot of protein.
So if you want to know what the best options are as far as protein, we can talk about complete proteins. So you may have heard And if you've looked at vegan protein at all or plant-based proteins at all, you've definitely heard the argument that vegan protein is incomplete or they're not complete proteins. So we can talk a little bit about what that actually means and how true it is, and it is a little true, and how we kind of deal with that as vegans.
Yeah. But the bottom line is it's not something you have to worry about as much as people say.
Right.
If you're eating a balanced diet with different sources of protein, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But it's good to at least know what they're talking about so you can kind of make those decisions if they need to be made.
So you can tell them why they're wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, sometimes you just have to get a little feisty.
Throw hands.
There are 9 essential amino acids, and this is what your protein gives you. So it gives you a lot of amino acids. 9 of them are essential, which means we have to get them through food, and we can't make them on our own in our bodies. So I'm going to say them. There are a bunch of really long, obnoxious chemical names, but it's good to hear them because we want to talk about a couple of examples of where some are missing. Okay. So the 9 essential amino acids are histidine, isoleucine, leucine, which is really the important one for muscle building, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, threonine, tryptophan, and valine.
And if he pronounced any of those wrong, please let him know.
Yeah, absolutely. Although, pronunciation is kind of a personal preference thing, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. He's from Kentucky.
Especially being from Kentucky. Exactly. So I'm surprised anybody can understand me at all.
Y'all.
So now that we know our 9 essential amino acids, a complete protein is a protein source that has all 9 of these in a sufficient amount. You might see some definitions online where a complete protein is just, it has all 9 of these. That's not technically true because all protein has some level of all 9 of these. And even a little further than that, almost all food has some protein. So almost all food has some level of all 9 of these amino acids. So technically a complete protein just means that it has all 9 of them in a sufficient amount each. And you might be thinking next, obviously, what is a sufficient amount? So the reference they use for a sufficient amount for a complete protein is basically the same of each of these that is already in human muscle. So the amount that makes up human muscle, again, because human muscle is basically directly made up of proteins, the amount of each of the amino acids in human muscle is what they use for the reference to make a complete protein.
So the perfect protein source is human meat?
That may be true. I haven't seen anything to that, but, logically, it makes sense.
And it's probably the cheapest protein source if you think about it, because people die every day.
Yeah, and if somebody tells you that you can eat their muscle, then it's probably vegan, right?
I think so. You got to get consent, but yeah.
Yeah, it's probably, we'll have to check with maybe PETA on that. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, don't eat people.
Unless they're rude. Said the great late Hannibal Lecter, apparently.
Okay, so now that we know what complete protein means, you should know that most plant protein sources are incomplete because they have an insufficient amount of one or more of those 9 essential amino acids. So let's talk about some examples using some of the common vegan protein sources and what they're lacking in that makes them not a complete protein. So wheat-based proteins like oats or seitan, like we talked about, have everything they need except for the lysine. So they're a little short on lysine, and that's what makes them not a complete protein source. It's not that they have 0 lysine, they're just a couple percentage points short of what would be considered complete.
But if you made your seitan with tofu,
yeah,
then it would be complete.
That's true. And that's something called protein combining. And because of the way that your amino acids kind of pull up in your body, you don't necessarily need to do that in the same meal, but you can. So some other examples that people use are like rice and beans make a complete protein if you put them together. Peanut butter and jelly sandwich is technically a complete protein if you put it together. So some people do that. It's not really necessary, but if you do want to make sure that you're getting them all in, you're certainly welcome to combine them. The other example is beans. They're short in methionine. So this would really only be a problem like for the wheat, for example, if your only protein for the whole day was seitan or something like that. Because normally you would eat other sources of protein throughout the day, and those would give you the lysine that you need. And then you'd have all the other amino acids from the seitan. So if you eat any like soy throughout the day, which is a complete protein, has all in a sufficient amount, then it's going to give you the extra lysine that you were missing from the seitan. So it's not really that big of a deal, but it is technically true that most of your plant sources are not complete proteins. So let's talk about the vegan protein sources that are complete proteins, just so you know what those options are. And these are the ones that, if you wanted to, you could eat just this for your protein source, and you get all the amino acids.
Assuming you ate enough of it.
Right, which is what we're going to talk about when we see these examples, because that's really hard.
So soy's easy.
Yeah, soy, an easy one for sure, because you can make it a bunch of different ways. You can eat it several times a day. You can get it, most importantly, in the right volume that you can hit your calorie goal and your protein goal using soy.
Easily.
So the other options are quinoa, amaranth, buckwheat, spirulina, hemp seeds, chia seeds, and nutritional yeast. So when you hear that list, you might think, wow, those aren't really like things I sit and put as a major portion of my plate. And that would be correct.
Except for nutritional yeast.
Yeah, we do use nutritional yeast basically as a main protein source.
It's so good though.
Yeah. It is really good. Quinoa is probably the closest you'll get, but quinoa is very carb heavy. It's basically kind of like a rice. So you're going to have a lot of extra calories if you try to get all your protein from quinoa. But you can use quinoa and, get a complete protein source.
Yeah, really same with most of these is they're not protein first.
Right.
Like soy is kind of like protein is the primary macro that you're getting, but these other ones are like either carb first or maybe even fat first.
Yeah, we, for various reasons, basically, we tend to lean on soy as our main source of protein, and then probably wheat like seitan as our secondary. But we always have soy during the day too, to make up for, what we're missing from the wheat. So if you don't have a soy allergy and you have an interest in protein goals and you're, into fitness and stuff like that, you're probably going to want to lean pretty heavily in the soy direction.
Yeah. And nutritional yeast is actually super high in protein as well.
Yeah.
But to eat enough for your daily target would be pretty hard. It'd be challenging.
You'd have to eat like, 5 bottles of nutritional yeast a day or something.
Yeah, you would. I don't know that it would be very economical either, but...
Yeah, so on the note of protein goals, how much protein should you eat in a day? We've kind of talked about this before. We've got some blog posts about it, but just so it's here in the same place with all this protein information, we can talk about it briefly. And it's important to note that there's a difference between the minimum necessary to not be literally protein deficient as far as your health and like the optimal protein range that somebody who's doing some kind of resistance training should aim for to maximize their muscle growth and minimize their muscle loss, depending on if they're gaining or losing weight. So just for normal human health, the recommended daily amount is either 0.4 grams per pound of body weight or 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight, depending on your measuring system. So that's just to not have literal protein deficiency and be healthy. So if you're not doing resistance training, you're not lifting weights or anything that you're expecting to grow a lot of muscle from, you can just make sure you get that as a minimum and not really even have to think about it anymore.
Yeah. So let's say you're 150 pounds. That would be 60 grams.
Yeah. Pretty easy to hit, even on accident, I think, in a lot of cases. And then if you are doing resistance training, trying to build muscle, trying to preserve muscle, you want to try to aim more for 0.8 to 1.2 grams per pound of either your lean body mass, if you know that, or you can just use your target body weight or your goal body weight. And then for kilograms, it is 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram.
So for the same example, if you're 150 pounds, that would be 180 grams on the high end.
Right. And that is the high end. And there's a little bit of benefit going from the low end at like 0.8 to the high end at 1.2. But if you just hit that 0.8, you're probably going to get 80 to 85% of everything you're going to get out of the protein. So if you're looking to optimize it a little more and you don't mind getting more protein in your diet, you can push it up to about 1.2. You won't see much benefit at all beyond that. But you're going to get most of the benefit anything above 0.8.
Okay, so then how would one find their lean body mass?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways. They sell calipers you can basically use to do a body fat pinch test. And you can figure out your body fat percentage. And then from there, anything that's not body fat from your total weight is your lean body mass.
What about those scales?
The scales, they have impedance scales and I think a couple of other methods that guesstimate your body fat percentage. It's probably okay to get a general idea, but from what I've seen, they're not very accurate. The most accurate method is something like an actual DEXA scan that actually uses radiology to scan your body for all the different components.
But like those scales are pretty cheap, so you think you get like a decent number?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good starting point, and you probably won't get too far off. So,
or you could guesstimate, because there are like, you could find pictures of people around your weight, and then they'll tell you like this is 20% body fat. This is 30% body fat. You can get estimations that way as well.
Yeah, and I think that's a pretty good way to do it because you're going to get it within probably 10% doing it that way, just because everybody is different. But from each 10% bracket of body weight, you can tend to pretty much know where you're at in that range. And that's going to be close enough to probably get your lean body mass approximate for something like a protein target.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about the foods. We briefly mentioned protein powder. So you might be thinking, okay, well, do I even need protein powder? When should I use a protein powder? And I think it's easiest just to think of protein powder like a really lean or really low calorie source of a complete protein, right? So it's basically like the best possible source of protein as far as calories to the protein ratio goes.
Are all protein powders complete sources?
No, they're not. So you want to make sure the one you buy is a complete protein. They normally achieve that through some kind of blending. Like you'll see them blended with like watermelon seed and pea protein, a couple different protein sources. So they'll make themselves complete.
But they're not automatically. No, so you should check.
Not automatically. And if you get a soy protein powder, those are complete.
Right.
But I think most of the brands these days do make it a complete protein by default. But there are a couple that aren't. So you want to try to avoid those only because if you're using protein powder, it's probably a pretty big part of your protein allotment for the day. And you really don't want a big chunk of it to be incomplete protein if you can help it.
And if you're using protein powder, as someone who does not like protein powder, I'm going to offer you this. TVP is way cheaper than protein powder, and it's a very similar percentage on a calorie basis, protein-wise. So you should just use TVP.
Yeah, and it's soy, so a complete protein source.
It's soy much better than protein powder, in my opinion.
That's a good one. I like that. So yeah, you might want to use something like that when you're having a little trouble hitting your protein target. So if your protein target is like 180 grams of protein a day and you're eating all the food you can and you're only getting to like 130, 140, then, just throw in a protein shake once a day and just get an easy 40 grams of protein. So no big deal.
Oh, also, if you are unsure if you have complete protein, you can always do an EAA, right?
Yeah, you can do an EAA supplement, which is basically a concentrated dose of complete proteins with very low calories. And also, if you have one of those days they talked about where you only ate seitan or some kind of wheat for the whole day, and you just want to fill up the missing amino acids, for lack of a better term, you can just use a complete protein shake or, again, those EAA supplements to make sure that you have all the appropriate amino acids available for your muscles to use to grow.
Yeah, and finding vegan ones are pretty easy.
Yeah, especially these days. That's one of the things that we do have a lot of good vegan options on. I really like Ghost for their vegan protein powders. I think they may have stopped selling their amino acids entirely. I haven't been able to find Ghost aminos for the last couple of weeks, but I have been using Jay Cutler's brand. He has a product called Generate that is a vegan essential amino acid supplement that has a lot of really good flavors, a couple like sour watermelon, sour lemonade, stuff like that. So I've been using that now that I can't find Ghost anymore. I don't know if that's temporary or what, but okay. So also we talked a little bit about the normal foods and some of the supplement options. Now we got just a couple of vegan protein food tips. So some of the things we replace in our recipes to sneak in some extra protein. A big one we like to use is red lentil pasta.
Yeah, so anytime we make pasta, we just swap in red lentil pasta, and protein on that is pretty good because they just use like red lentil flour.
Yeah.
One ingredient. It's actually a whole food too, I think.
Yeah, and it's got a little different bite than normal pasta, but not really that different, and it's way better for your overall health goals.
And they make it in all kinds of different shapes, like they make spaghetti, penne, they make galaxy-shaped ones.
Oh, yeah, those were pretty good. Next, we use silken tofu and, I don't know, everything to try to throw a little extra protein.
My favorite way is just silken tofu in pasta sauces. That's one of our main meals that we make is we'll just make a silken tofu Alfredo sauce with nutritional yeast with red lentil pasta, and it's a really high protein dish.
Yeah, and really delicious.
You can also use silken tofu to make salad dressings, cheese sauces, any kind of sauces as a mayonnaise replacement. As a sour cream replacement, you can pretty much use it for anything that would be creamy.
Even the smoothies?
Smoothies, yeah. We throw it in for smoothies, and that adds some extra protein.
It really can be used in a whole lot of different ways. And check out the Protein Deficient Vegan website. You can just search for silken tofu, and you'll come across, I don't know.
It's a hyperfixation of mine.
Yeah, lots of recipes.
What can I put it in?
Yeah.
I put it in cupcakes this weekend.
I feel like it's in almost every recipe in some way.
Yeah, if you have a soy allergy, you probably will hate our website. And I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I do have some stuff that doesn't have it. So
Also, we use TVP in a lot of different stuff. We use it in a lot of different ways. Baked goods, savory stuff.
it's kind of sky's the limit on that.
Yeah.
Really like TVP muffins. It's like a easy, high protein breakfast,
Yeah. Plus, it helps that you can get it in a 25-pound bag. So,
which we have. Some other things we really like are Mission tortillas, better bagels. There's this endurance like tortilla chips.
Oh, yeah.
They have a nacho flavor that I really like. Those are, I think, 14 grams for 150 calories, so pretty solid macros.
Yeah, it's kind of like a plant protein Doritos knockoff. But
Yeah, if you've ever had Quest chips before you went vegan, they're kind of like the equivalent of that, but I actually like them better than Quest chips. We've been using Vital Wheat gluten a lot. That's like 70 to 80% protein on a calorie basis, and you can sneak it into all kinds of stuff. We've actually been making a bunch of different kind of seitan. Seitan is shockingly easy to make at home if you haven't messed with that. It literally takes like maybe 10 minutes of actual effort, and then you just cook it. And Vital Wheat gluten is pretty cheap on a gram of protein basis, so definitely use that.
Yeah, and you made a lot of cool stuff with it recently that I didn't even know existed, and I'm not sure it did exist before you made it. So I usually think of seitan as like a meat replacement or something, but you've been using it for all kinds of crazy things, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I wake up with these weird things in my brain, and then I can't think about anything else until I try to make them.
Yeah, so that pretty much covers all the information about protein. If you want to see some examples or maybe get a little bit of a guide for how to get the amount of protein that you need in your diet on so many calories and see some meal plans or ideas of how you might put something like that together, Protein Deficient Vegan has an ebook on her site, and we'll link that here in the show notes. And then also on Instagram, you can see examples of the recipes on Protein Deficient Vegan's Instagram. On my Instagram, I've got a couple reels pinned that are like what I eat in a day that shows an example day. I think those are at 2,100 calories with 180 grams of protein. So if you want to just see a couple of example days of what that looks like for that specific bracket, you can check that out.
Yeah, my free ebook, the weekly meal plan that I have in there, it's like 120 grams of protein each day for about 1,500 to 1,700 calories. So obviously, if your calorie goal is higher than that, you can just add in some other stuff or maybe like double a meal here or there. But yeah, we're on Reddit pretty frequently, and it's something that gets asked all the time is like, is it possible to hit 100 grams of protein, or can I actually eat 180 grams of protein on, 2,200 calories? And the answer is yes, but it does take some finagling. Is that a word?
Finagling.
Finagling.
Cool. So check those out. We'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes. And then also in current events, only one thing I think for this week, Veg News posted that one of the gold medalist winners in the Olympics was a fencer from Hong Kong. So they do the sword fighting,
Yeah.
So that's not offensive to any fencers, but maybe you don't know what fencing is. So I'm just going to call it sword fighting for the moment.
Yeah, but it's like really cool though. And
Right.
they have the metal face mask things.
It definitely looks cool. I always wish
It looks fun.
I would have had a chance to try that in some way, but I don't know where you do it. But anyway, she's vegan.
They do it on Gilmore Girls. They fence on Gilmore Girls, remember?
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That's my only knowledge of fencing. Sorry, continue.
No, I was just going to say, they said, she is plant-based and she won a gold medal in the Olympics this year from Hong Kong.
Hell
So
yeah.
That's pretty cool. Also, a couple of recipes we have coming up on the website. A couple of forms of seitan. You made an apple cinnamon seitan that was super awesome.
It was really good.
Yeah. So it was basically just like chunks of apple and then cinnamon, and then you cook it like a normal seitan and make it into the little
Yeah, shriveled balls.
Shriveled balls that we made the chocolate version from.
For some reason, they get real shriveled. Like they puff up crazy big while they're cooking.
Yeah.
And then within 60 seconds of them out of the oven, they're like these little shriveled sacks. I don't know.
It goes from like probably baseball size to probably a little smaller than a golf ball by the time it's over.
And super shrivelly.
Yeah.
I don't mind it.
Yeah, and they tear really nicely. It's really good.
Yeah, the textures look crazy. They're so chewy, and I really like them.
Yeah, me too. You also made one that had coconut flakes instead of apple cinnamon. It was like a coconut version.
Yeah, that one was good too.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have thought coconut and seitan that really go together, but
they do.
Yeah,
it works good.
Really nice little snack, high protein.
Mm-hmm.
Good to go.
Easy to make too.
Also, you made some really good coconut cupcakes. Tell us how you did that.
Yeah, so for the first time making cupcakes anyways, I used silken tofu instead of eggs, and I actually really liked the texture it gave it. Did you like it?
Yeah, I liked it a lot.
It kept it like really moist, but it also didn't get crumbly like I feel like stuff always gets crumbly when I'm baking, even non-vegan baking when I used to bake. And I don't like I'm weird about cakes. I don't like crumbly cakes.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed, a lot of vegan baking can get pretty dry, it seems like. And especially when you see ones that are really thick on the inside, you just know they're going to be dry. But it seems like the silken tofu, to me, helps keep it moist even when there's like a lot of, substance on the inside.
Yeah. And I don't know why that is.
Yeah.
But it turned out really well. And it was kind of like springy.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really liked the texture of it a lot.
Yeah, they were really good. Cool. So I think that's all we got for this week. Make sure if you have any questions about any of these recipes, or you have any questions about protein, or maybe even specifically vegan protein, anything like that, feel free to reach out to us. You can find us on our social medias linked in the show notes or on the website. You can comment on the articles, leave something in the contact forms, or even you can leave a comment now, I think, on Spotify on the podcast. So any of these ways, we see all that stuff, and feel free to reach out.
Or if you just have ideas, or like have ideas of recipes you want to see, or things you would want us to talk about.
Yeah. All right. Well, I hope everybody has a good week and you can put some of this information to use, and we'll see you next week. You want to say bye?
Bye.
Bye, everybody.